Hello and welcome back to the PowerDrift podcast. Who do I have here with me? It is Mr. Ashim. Ashim is a world traveler and he's recently concluded his trip from Australia to India on a GSX-R600. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But Ashim, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Thanks, Varun. Yeah, I'm doing good. How about you?
Very well, very well. Ashim, I think the first time I got to know about you what was from a common friend, Aditya Mack. He's been a friend of yours as well. And he told me that there's this guy called Ashim who's been traveling from Australia. He's ending his journey in India. And I thought, you know what, let's get him on the podcast and let's have a chat about how it all happened. So, Ashim, what has motorcycling been for you for all these years?
So I started riding motorcycles probably about 10, 11 years ago.
Right.
I started like most people do, just on a small bike. So back then I was riding my dad's 1252 stroke in Sydney.
Right.
I learned on that. And then the first bike that I bought was a GSX-R600. So the bike that I've ridden here on is actually my first bike.
Really?
So
Wow.
yeah, so it started off just as a weekend thing, just a weekend hobby, because back there, I mean, I catch a train to work. I have a car that I use daily, so a bike is just a toy. So I was riding on weekends. Every Sunday, I'd be out in the mountains just enjoying myself, and slowly that went into track days.
Yeah.
So it became my track bike.
Oh, wow.
And I really got into track days as well. So I did about 14 in the space of a year,
Uh-huh.
and then I crashed.
Okay.
So once you crash a bike, especially a road bike, you don't care about it being, pretty and pristine anymore.
Yeah.
At the same time, I really enjoyed travel as well. I was backpacking a lot. So what sort of happened was my love for travel and love for motorcycles, they sort of combined, and I started using a motorbike to travel. At the time, what I didn't know was that people legitimately traveled by car or motorcycle or whatever it may be for long distances. All I did was I took my backpack, I strapped it on the back of the bike, and off I went for a day or a weekend somewhere in Australia.
Right.
Then, as I was traveling as well, what really got me going was I was in Thailand, and I was in the north of Thailand. I just saw a motorbike, a Honda CB400 for rent. Again, I just took it, strapped the backpack to the back, and off I went. And what really got me was I came into a guest house one day, and parked next to my Thai registered motorcycle, there was a motorcycle with Australian number plates on it. And that just blew my mind. Like, how can I be in a country so far from home and there's a number plate from home on that motorbike? That's when I really started reading into it and understanding that actually people do travel across the world or across countries on their motorcycle.
Right.
So yeah, it sort of took off from there. Like, it went from small trips around Australia for a few days to a few weeks. I covered most of the eastern seaboard and some of the outback as well.
Right.
And it just sort of expanded from there on.
Yeah. But have you always been in Australia? Were you born in Australia?
No, I was actually born in India. So I was actually born in a small town called Wai,
Okay.
about 80 kilometers from here.
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so I was born there, but I've never lived in India. So the first 8 years of my life, I actually grew up in the Middle East in a
Right.
country called Oman.
Uh-huh.
And after that, my parents moved to Sydney. So
Okay.
I've been in Sydney since.
So you've been in Sydney for almost your
the
entire...
majority of my life, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you say you started off with small rides, how small were these rides? Because in India,
Yeah.
a small ride, a weekend ride usually consists of maybe like 100 kilometers one way, which
Yeah.
means you start off at what, 7 a.m. in the morning, come back by 10,
The
and you have
thing
the
is,
rest of
like,
the day with yourself.
one thing I've learned riding in India this time, you can't compare Indian riding to anywhere
Yeah,
else
yeah,
in the world. Like,
right.
in Sydney, like, some of my smaller rides, they were like over the weekend, 1-2 days.
Right.
But the distances I'd cover could easily be 5, 6, 700 kilometers in a day.
Yeah.
And I don't like doing long days, but the
Yeah.
roads are flat. They're
Yeah.
fairly boring at times, and you just
yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
In India, you just can't do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You've got a billion things coming at you. You've got cars, you've got people, scooters, cows, all sorts of
All
things.
sorts, yeah.
So yeah, so smaller rides, they started off as a day or two,
Right.
as I could get time from work. And then I took maybe 5 days. I did like a bit of the Alpine region. Then
Right.
I took 2 weeks. I went up right to the top of Australia through the outback, and I came down the coast.
Wow.
And what sort of happens is, as you do these, you learn something new every time, and you build up your own endurance, your own knowledge, and it enables you to go further and longer.
Right. So you've been riding for how long now?
Probably about 12 years,
And you've had the GSX-R 600 for how long?
10 years.
10 years. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's put on a lot of kilometers as well.
It actually hasn't. So, like I said, it was a weekend only bike.
Right.
After I started doing track days, I stopped riding on the road altogether. After I crashed it, it sat there for about a year and a half. So, it spent a lot of time in the garage. So,
Right.
as of now, I think I've got about 55,000 kilometers on it. And about 22,000 of that was from this ride alone.
22,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to get to that. I mean, how did this Australia to India story start for you?
Look, it's been a dream for a long time, and it's been a dream that sort of changed in ways over that time as well. So first, I wanted to go from Australia to UK. I wanted to go to the Isle of Man, and I
Right.
wanted that to be my endpoint. But life happens along the way. Like work things comes up, personal things come up, and every year I would sort of put it off. I'd be like, no, this year I'm going to go. This year I'm going to go. But you never quite do it. Through that time, I did other trips as well. So I wanted to go to America. I wanted to Europe, like as part of an around the world trip.
Right.
But what happened is,
But you went to a certain place, rode around, and came back.
no. So the big trip I never did until now.
Ah,
What I'm
okay.
saying is, I had this idea of the big trip, but every year something would happen, and I'd say, okay, next year, but I'll change it a little bit.
Right.
But through that time, I managed to do other smaller things. So, for
Right.
example, I had an opportunity to go to Holland. I bought a motorbike there,
Okay.
a GSX-R600, but
Right.
that was a 2003.
Yeah.
I rode that to Turkey
Yeah.
and then back again.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not small, but it's smaller.
Yeah.
I had a chance to go to America. I bought a GSX-R there. I rode that for 3 months
Yeah.
and then flew back home.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to interrupt you here, but why this certain fascination or affection towards that
I
motorcycle in
haven't-
particular?
There's really no brand dedication or anything like that. So even when I bought this bike,
Yeah.
I didn't know much about bikes or the supersport class. So
Right.
I literally went onto Google Images
Right.
and I just typed in, I don't know, 600s because I learned on a 125. I thought 600 seems like a good step rather than going to 1,000 or something.
Right.
And a couple of appealing images that came up was a Daytona 675
Right.
and the GSX-R.
Okay.
I went to a dealership, sat in the Daytona. It was far too cramped, far too aggressive.
Yeah.
I went and started GSX-R. I'm like, yeah, this seems nice.
Yeah.
So I bought it.
I mean, even the 1,000 for that matter is one of the most comfortable liter bikes out there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, I've got to say, like, learning on the GSX-R, like learning a bigger bike, learning to ride a bigger bike on GSX-R, I've made a lot of mistakes that I wouldn't have gotten away with if I was riding something like an R6 or a
Right.
CBR. Like, I've ridden
Oh,
my
really?
friends' bikes.
Uh-huh.
It's a smooth bike. It's comfortable. It's forgiving. But in terms of why this thing, it's just, I'm stubborn. People tell me that, no, you can't use this sort of bike for traveling. And
Right.
I feel like, no, I can, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And the main thing is, it's my bike. I've had it for 10 years. And you have a moment, you could be the most miserable person. You've been riding through the sand in the desert somewhere for a whole day and you've only covered a few kilometers, but you'll be sitting on the side having a bit of water and you look at your bike and you're like, yeah,
That's
this
the one.
is my bike.
Yeah, absolutely happens. So yeah, getting back to the story of Australia to India, I mean, it always begins with planning, right?
Yeah. So that's that's almost harder than the actual ride itself.
100%.
Especially when you're crossing so many countries, and especially on this trip. Coming from Australia, you've got a couple of options you can take. A lot of people come through sort of Southeast Asia, where the tourist infrastructure is well developed, and the countries are fairly easy to get through as well. What I actually did is I came through Russia and then into Central Asia.
Oh,
So Central Asia basically consists of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan,
right.
and they're a bit more tougher to get through.
Yep.
And in between those, there's also Mongolia.
Right.
So amongst these countries, there's very little infrastructure. Roads simply don't exist in a lot of the places.
Yeah.
English is not there either.
But
And-
you took that route by choice?
By choice, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you wanted it to be a little strenuous?
Yeah,
or-
no,
or-
100%. So one of the key things I wanted to do was ride through Mongolia. So Mongolia, for a lot of adventure riders, so adventure riders are these guys who travel on, the big bikes, and
We've got
they like going
We've got
off-road.
one person sitting here,
Okay.
Akshay Jadhav. He wants to do Mongolia so bad.
Yeah,
So I think after the podcast gets over, you guys are going to have a good chat about it.
nice.
Yeah.
No, even for me, Mongolia was just like, how I kept saying, like, I wanted something to be like a key thing. Like once it was Isle of Man or
Right.
once it was USA. On this trip, it was getting to India, but I wanted to go through Mongolia.
Right.
Because all riders talk about it like this super hard place, like super unpopulated. It's just really natural and raw.
Right.
Which is all well and good if you're on a big KTM or some sort of off-road bike, but on a sports bike, it's a bit tougher. So coming back to planning, the first thing is the route itself. I needed to look at what countries I need to pass through, what are the seasons going to be like, because especially for Mongolia, you've got like a 2 to 3 month window where it's not super cold, the rivers aren't super high.
Right.
You've got to plan that right. And you can't get everything right, because if you try to plan that right, then you're leaving yourself a little bit later when you come into this sort of Central Asia, Pakistan, India region where it starts getting cold.
Yeah.
So you try your best to do that sort of planning. So the first is the route.
Right.
And once you know your route, the next is actually, okay, I know I want to go through these countries, but can I? So you've got to think about things like your visa,
Yep.
taking your motorbike through.
Yep.
Now, even the motorbike, it sounds simple, like you get like a temporary import into each country and you take it back out. But sometimes things conflict. So I applied for my Pakistan visa and it actually got rejected. And that
Okay.
was a big problem for me because I wanted to come to India.
Okay.
I had all these backup options and one of them was Iran.
Okay.
But if I as I wanted to go to Iran, they implemented a new rule where no foreign motorbikes over 250cc are allowed into the country.
Okay.
So you keep coming up with hurdle after hurdle, and there's always an option, but it's sort of it gets expensive. And
Yeah.
sometimes you never know. You can still rock up to the border, think everything is okay, and they can just turn around and say, no, you're not coming in.
Right.
So there's a lot of research that goes into it, a lot of reading.
So how long did you spend just figuring out which route to take with
You know,
the visa,
because-
the documentation
Because
process?
this has been on my mind for such a long time, I would just be casually reading on the train to work or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is these laws and regulations, they're changing all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes it even comes down to the border guard
Yep.
on that
Exactly.
day, you know?
Yep.
So the best resource is actually from other people. So you can read an article from 5 years ago and it's going to be of no use to you.
Right.
So
Especially with documentation.
that's right, yeah. And with weather as well, you've got to keep an eye on, okay, this road might have been washed out. There's heavy rain this year. You can't go that same
Yep.
road. So I'd just be spending a lot of time just browsing through other people's stories.
Right.
The toughest thing for me was everyone's perspective is different. If someone is traveling on a bicycle, for them, a gravel road is fine because they're just pushing the bicycle through. A car may be going on a road that's got heavy potholes, but they just pass over it really fast. For me to find someone who's done the road on the supersport, it was impossible. No one
Yeah, I mean,
had.
that's the surprising bit of it all. Yeah, I mean, people who are usually traveling across the globe, they are on a motorcycle that specifically caters towards the adventure
That's right.
genre. Yeah, I mean, for you to be on like a super sport is surprising, to be
Yeah,
honest.
and that was the most difficult thing because everything I read I had to take with a grain of salt because
Right.
someone would say, "Oh no, this track is super easy." I'd try to find as many pictures as I could. I'd go into Google Maps and zoom down into the Earth view to see what the track was like, and sometimes I would ignore what other people would say and go with my own judgment, and it worked out well because for Mongolia, there's a couple of borders you can come through, and I wanted to come through this super remote border, and people told me, "Look, it's going to be really easy. It's just a single trail of sand, and it's really manageable." I didn't choose that border. I went and get at the last minute, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to use that one. I'll go to the main border.
Right.
The main border was tough enough. I dropped the bike there, I think, once or twice as it is.
Oh, wow.
But then when I got down to Ulaanbaatar, the capital, and I met one guy who actually came through that other border I wanted to come through, he told me it was just pure hell. Because again, every year the terrain changes and what you read online might be from a guy with like a KTM 690 who's just flying over it. And doesn't apply to you.
Yeah. So which route did you finally end up taking?
So what I did, I actually freighted my bike from Sydney to Vladivostok in Russia, which is like in the Far East.
Yeah.
And that's the Siberia region.
Yeah.
So I
And you flew down.
I flew down. Yeah, I flew down. So I rode it through Siberia. That was about 3 weeks, and that was pretty easy. It was just across the Trans-Siberian Highway. The road was not great at times, but Russians are really hospitable. Like going from Russian biker club to biker club, that was really cool. I entered from the north of Mongolia and down to Ulaanbaatar, the capital.
Okay.
Now, Mongolia has about 500 kilometers of road around the capital, and that's it. The rest of the country is just pure tracks out in the open.
Yeah.
So from there, I started heading west, and there's 3 routes you can take: the northern, the central, the southern. The southern is sort of desert and a lot of washboard. Washboard is like the corrugated roads.
Right.
The center is supposed to be, well, everyone said it's impassable. People that I met in Ulaanbaatar that had come the other way, they told me, no, we didn't take center. Everyone said it's bad. You just can't do it. And the north is super technical because you've got high river crossings and you've got fairly rough tracks.
Wow.
Again, against all everyone else's advice, I took the central route because I thought this is what's going to work for me.
Right.
And it did.
It did?
So it did, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't tough. It was a mixture of being able to do it slowly, but it was beautiful. Because the other thing is, you've come such a long way. What's the point of being out in the desert on a dusty road if it's not actually beautiful? Like, I want to see where I've come. Like, I've come through Mongolia. I want to see the country. So I took the central route. It was tough. And what actually happened is in the middle of that route, so out in the middle of nowhere, I met a Japanese guy. So he was riding from Japan, so roughly the same side of the world that I'm on.
Right.
and he's actually heading to South Africa, and he was in a Honda Monkey.
What?
Yeah, the little
Wow,
125.
the 125, yeah,
Yeah.
the Grom. I mean, yeah, it's called
Yeah.
Grom nowadays, but yeah, the Monkey was the
So
older version, yeah.
that was cool because what happened
Wow.
is our bikes couldn't be more different,
Right.
but we had the exact same problems. Both of our bikes were terrible for what we were trying to do,
Yeah.
and we actually agreed that on a couple of the really tough days where there was absolutely no, like, forget mobile reception, there's no people, there's nothing. We teamed up for those days because we thought, we've got the same pace, we got along fairly well. So along this trip, I was with a Honda Monkey at times. That was pretty cool as well.
Superb.
And for people to come across us seeing that, they'd be flying through in their groups of BMWs and they'd see us two sort of crawling through the sand and they'd just be like, what are you guys doing here?
Can imagine.
So, so into Mongolia, across Mongolia successfully. And I've tried to do a fair bit of research, but as far as I can tell, I'm the first person who actually crossed on a sport bike as well. So that was pretty cool. Like to get to the end of that and know that I made it through and, despite everyone else saying that I wouldn't. From there, I had to go back into Russia because I wanted to go to Kazakhstan, but Mongolia and Kazakhstan don't actually share a border that can be crossed. Back into Russia, then down through Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, in Tajikistan all the way down to the Afghan border.
Yeah.
And then back into Kyrgyzstan, China, Pakistan, and then India.
Where did you enter India from?
I entered India from the Pakistan-India border at Wagah.
Oh, at Wagah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
you
up in the
ended your
north.
journey in Pune.
I have ended my journey, but not necessarily by choice. So I
Okay.
actually wanted to end my journey in Wei, the town where
Okay.
I was born,
Right.
which is not far from here at all.
Yeah.
When I got here, which is I think the first day we spoke, we were going to meet up.
Yeah.
I started noticing a bit of charging issues with the
Right.
bike, with the electrical system.
Right.
Since then, the bike's been in and out of a couple of workshops, and as of now, so like literally after this, I'm gonna go check on it because I've got no idea where it's up to.
Oh, wow.
So I've fallen a little bit short.
Yeah.
The bike's got to get shipped home.
Fallen short by 80 kilometers.
I've fallen a little bit short.
Yeah. Little bit. Yeah.
Which is kind of disappointing. Like,
Yeah,
I
I'm
feel like
sure.
I've come so far. Like, I know the ride I've done. I know I've accomplished what I wanted to.
Yeah.
But it's that sense of completion that I still haven't quite gotten. So,
Yeah.
look, the bike's got to get shipped back home in a couple of weeks.
Oh.
I'm really hoping that somehow I can get a miracle and get it back on the road and just finish off.
Yeah, but before we jump onto the motorcycle and talk about what you've done in terms of modifications and getting on the luggage and all of that, how easy is the documentation process or just going across borders?
Look, the first thing is visas, and that depends on what your nationality is.
Right.
So for me as an Australian citizen, it's a little bit easier, I have to say, because I met people from other countries and it's not quite as easy from, like, I've met people from India who are traveling, Saudi, and they have to go through more checks and hoops to get that visa. However, being a person of Indian origin, the Pakistan visa was a little bit tricky to get, but I got it in the end.
Okay. So did you face any issue while crossing borders?
No.
It was just very simple.
It's simple. So, once you have the visa, that's you as a person sorted.
Right.
The second part is the bike, the documentation for the bike.
Right.
For most countries, you get to the border, you fill out a temporary import form, and then at the exit, that bike is exported again.
Okay.
Because they want to make sure that you're not bringing the bike in there and trying to
Country.
sell it off in
Yup,
the country.
yup, correct.
For India and Pakistan, it's a bit tougher because you have to have a different document called a carnet de passage,
Okay.
which is basically a guarantee from an automotive body in Australia that I will temporarily import it, but I will export it as well.
Okay.
Because if I don't,
Yeah.
then there's like a 300% duty that needs to be imposed on the vehicle.
Like India, for example, the bike's been around for like almost 2 months now?
Yeah.
So is there a time period that you get?
For India, I've got a 6-month limit.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
So, So if India and Pakistan were a bit trickier in terms of getting the bike in, but once you've got the carnet sorted, you've got the documents sorted.
Yeah.
Crossing borders, look, it's not tough in terms of what you have to do, but the longest border crossing I think I had to wait for was about 11 hours.
Okay.
You're just stuck. You're just waiting there because you're at their mercy. If
Right.
they want to go for a lunch break, they're going to go for a lunch break.
Yeah.
So you just have to be patient.
Yeah.
But the toughest one was China.
Right.
So taking your own vehicle into China, you can't go there by yourself. You have to be there with a government guide.
Oh.
And that costs a lot of money. So for one person, just for a 4-day crossing from Kyrgyzstan to Pakistan, they quoted me $2,500 US. So what I managed to do was I got a group of people together. They were traveling by car, bike, whatever. They were coming from Europe. They also
Right.
were coming towards India.
Uh-huh.
We get a group together and we can share some of the costs. So I got that cost down to about $1,000 US. So
Still super expensive.
it's expensive, but
Yeah.
look, there's not many options because it's a part of the world where you can't. they're very high border crossings,
Yes.
and you can't, even if there's a crossing there on the map, you can't actually cross over with a vehicle.
Right. Oh,
So
okay.
unfortunately, China was a crucial link that I had to go through. Expensive, yes, but if I wanted to come through Pakistan and India, it's what I needed to do.
Yeah. And how much have you spent in total?
Look, not as much as I would have thought. So on average, if I average out costs of living, servicing, food, about 40 Australian dollars a day.
Okay.
So 40.
That's not bad.
That's not bad. So
that includes fuel as well?
yeah, because fuel was super cheap. So India is by far the most expensive place for fuel. Everywhere else, it would be like maybe even a quarter of this price.
Oh, wow.
Like fuel here has been expensive, but luckily I've not had a running bike, so it's not really come into play.
So $40 a day. These are Australian dollars? US
Australian dollars. So
Australian
times
dollars.
50 for
Yeah.
rupees.
Yeah. And that's gone on for how long?
That's now it's 6 months. So I left in June.
Wow.
So,
I mean,
look,
yeah, if you're good at maths, then you'll probably figure out what the total cost is. Yeah.
but the biggest cost is the freight.
Yeah.
You know, so shipping the bike to Russia and now shipping it back home,
Yeah.
that's probably, those two shipments are probably going to be more expensive than my whole
Approximately
living
how much?
expenses. I spent about 3,000 to get it into Russia, and it's going to cost me about 3,000 to send it back home.
Wow.
And this is why most people advocate just going to a place, buying a bike, and then riding
and
it.
then, yeah.
But again, this
Yeah.
is my bike. I wanted to ride it, and I'm paying for that luxury.
Yeah, yeah. And how was stay? I mean, in different parts of the world.
How was what,
it
sorry?
stay? I mean, was
yeah,
it easy?
good.
Stay and food. I mean, I'm sure you've traveled.
Food, look,
far
you've
enough.
got to be ready to eat whatever you can.
Yeah.
One thing is you always keep some emergency food with you.
Yeah.
I call it emergency food. So
Yeah.
the first time me and the Japanese guy, we got together, we were riding, and it got to about 8 o'clock, and we could see rain clouds on the horizon. We're like, look, we're not going to make it today the way we want to go. Let's camp. And
But
he
was
had
there like a certain, like a marker on the map every day where you had to reach?
not where I had to reach,
Yeah.
but I would aim to reach there because
Yeah.
I knew that there would be some accommodation there, maybe some place to
But you
get
did
some
not
water
plan
again.
any accommodation as such.
No,
as
nowhere,
such.
nowhere.
Yeah.
So that day he had no food with him. So I always keep 2 packs of noodles with me. I gave
Right.
him one. I had one because
wow. That's
he's
nice.
like, no, man, don't worry. I'll just have a biscuit for dinner. I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, man, let's have some hot food.
Yeah.
We've had a tough day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so staying, I keep camping and cooking equipment with me. So
Right.
even though the bike can't carry luggage, I've got, sleeping. I've got a tent. Cooking, I can cook all my own food.
Yeah.
I've even got a bit of a luxury item of like a chair.
Yeah.
So camping is essentially where it's for an emergency if I haven't made somewhere I need to be.
Right.
Or if it's a really beautiful spot where I'm like, yeah, look, it's going to be a really nice campsite. Otherwise, you just find guest houses, homestays.
Yeah.
If you come to a
But
town, you can
anything
find
that
something.
surprised your palate during this entire tour?
In Mongolia, the food was not so good.
What was it like?
Just smelly meat. Just meat that didn't smell good, man. Like, so they eat a lot of fat.
Right.
Because the sort of climate they live in,
Yeah.
they need to have that fat to keep
Yeah.
their bodies nourished.
Wow. Yeah.
They enjoy it. I didn't.
Yeah.
They also drink a lot of horse's milk,
Right.
which I think is a bit of an acquired taste as well.
Right. And plus, I think when you're traveling from one country to another, your stomach takes a while to get used to the kind
my
of food.
stomach's taken a big beating. So
Oh,
I think coming to Pakistan and China, I think about a month and a half, I was
Yeah.
traveling with a stomach infection, and there's just nothing I could do about
Yeah.
it. I just ate, took medicine, spent time in the bathroom. Like
Oh,
it was just a
damn.
cycle.
Yeah.
Because when you're traveling, getting medical attention is not always the easiest thing either.
Yeah.
Especially in some more remote areas. But look, you manage. You eat what you can, you sleep where you can. Sometimes it's really dirty, but
But you manage.
You manage.
Yeah. So when you speak of $40 a day, did that include accommodation as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
include
That
accommodation
include-
too? Wow,
so
dude,
that'd
was
be
quite a
accommodation,
budget tour.
food.
Yeah.
And look, I have to be honest. I could have probably spent less.
Yeah.
Because
Really?
I could have stayed in cheaper accommodation. I could have been cooking my own food the whole time. Like I met people who were camping for like a week on end. Then
Yeah.
they'd come into a guest house, have a shower, and then go back out.
Uh-huh.
I would camp for no more than like 2 days in a row because I wanted to get clean. I wanted to have a shower, and so yeah. Look, it could have been cheaper.
Yeah.
It's just as in Central Asia and Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Yeah. And let's start talking about the motorcycle, man. The GSX-R600.
Yeah. So look, it's fairly standard. I haven't done much to it. A lot of people said like, for example, you put risers on it, you put a gel seat, make it more comfortable. Being stubborn, I wanted to stick to what it is. It's my old track bike. I want to
Right.
keep it looking like that.
Yeah.
So I actually did change the clip-ons. The factory clip-ons are cast aluminium, but if it falls, that'll snap off really easily.
Yeah.
So I changed those to billet,
Yeah.
but I kept the same angle. I didn't want to change that.
Okay.
The seat is standard. I've just put a small fake eBay cheap sheepskin cover on it.
Right.
If it helps or not, I don't know, but
Right.
it's on there. But the biggest thing I did was I strengthened the bike. So modern sport bikes, they're pretty much an alloy aluminium type frame. They're
Right.
made to be lightweight. They're not meant to take the sort of abuse. And there's a couple of people around the world who have traveled on sport bikes,
Right.
and I've tried to learn from them.
Okay.
So the biggest thing that happens is from this constant shock of being off-road, the frame can snap. So where a steel or something might bend,
Yeah.
this is strong, but
Yeah.
when that stress finally gets to it, it snaps.
It'll break. Yeah.
But if you strengthen it too much, that force that you're exerting, it may not snap the subframe, for example, but
Yeah.
it'll snap somewhere else. That force is still going to
okay.
travel through the bike, and you
Right.
can't strengthen the whole bike.
Right.
So, for example, what happens to some people, or has happened to one person, is where the subframe meets the main frame,
Right.
and you're sitting on the subframe, the
Right.
weight of the person, the constant bouncing, the whole thing just snaps off, and you no longer have a bike. You
Right.
have an engine and a frame. That's it. So behind my subframe, I've welded metal plate to give it a bit more strength.
Okay.
I've added support rods from the pillion foot pegs to the rider foot pegs to basically add an extra support as well.
Okay.
And a third support has been added from the front of the frame to where the front fairing stay goes.
Right.
That's where your whole headlight and everything is.
Yeah.
Because again, being off-road, that whole
The
thing
front takes-
bouncing,
Yeah. Correct.
enough bouncing and it's just going to all drop off. So
Yeah.
another bracket has been added there.
Yeah. Any changes to the suspension?
Suspension is
Stock.
standard, and I felt it. Like
Yeah,
every
I'm sure.
every bump would be going straight through to my spine.
Yeah. Wow. And what about tires?
So tires, I did change. So look, people have done it on street tires. Even guys who use the big off-road or tourer bikes, they use street tires. I've got no off-road experience whatsoever, and I just thought that using a 50-50 type tire might give me a bit more confidence, having that bite going through.
Right.
So I've got off-road tires, both front and rear.
Yeah.
At home, I fitted what I could based on the research I had. 10,000 kilometers into the trip, I changed it again,
Okay.
and there it was a case of whatever I could purchase
And
in
were
Russia.
you carrying tires or?
No, I purchased them. So
right.
that's why the first time I changed them in Russia, I didn't have my first choice of tires, but it's whatever I could find while there.
Yeah.
And look, it may look a bit silly. Some people think it looks good, but it saved me a couple of times. So where I'd be going through deep, sticky mud or really soft sand, where regular tires might have just spun out, they kept biting. They kept pushing me through.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you can still get by on street tires. You play with the tire pressures.
Yeah.
I lowered my tire pressures on these as well.
Oh wow.
It just gave me confidence.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, even if it was all in my mind, it helped me get
But
through
you
it.
still had alloys. I mean, in terms of rims, you still
Yeah,
had alloys.
yeah,
You did not
yes.
change it to spokes, nothing.
No, so that was another thing that worried me a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, I was really careful everywhere else I was. In India is the first time I hit a massive speed hump. It wasn't marked. I'd been careful all day, and one time I was just like, yeah, let's go. And it just smashed straight into it. I
And
pulled
you had a
over
bent
right
rim?
away. It didn't bend. And
Oh.
they don't bend. They'll crack or
yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the stronger alloys will still take a beating and
Right.
might bend, but some of the weaker alloys will snap. Or
Right.
you'll have a crack on the rim. But nothing
like,
happened.
touch wood, nothing happened.
Did you have a puncture?
No punctures.
No
So
punctures along the way?
No punctures at all.
At all in 22,000
At all.
kilometers?
Nothing.
Zero.
Zero. And that's
wow.
going over like sharp rocks the size of your fist.
yeah.
It's going through, service lanes where people have thrown all sorts of glass and nails and everything. No punctures. I mean, I've carried a puncture kit with me. I've got an air compressor.
Yeah. And nothing.
Nothing.
Never got used. Did your bike ever face any problem at all?
Yes.
And what was that?
Look, I was expecting big issues like, having a big accident in some off-road section falling off,
Right.
complete electrical ECU failures or something. Nothing that big, but there has been a couple of problems. So the first one I had was after Mongolia. I was
Right.
in Russia trying to overtake a truck, and I felt some hesitation. Didn't think much of it. I could still rev up to $5,000, but knew that something needed to be done. So I pulled off the fuel tank, pulled out the fuel pump, and what I also got was about a handful of dirt. So even though I'd been filling up at petrol stations in Mongolia, the fuel quality or filtration must not have been so good. Luckily, the first fuel filter, before the fuel pump, before
Right.
the injectors, that caught most of it. And I had 5 spare of those, as well as a spare fuel pump.
Right.
So, that was a fairly easy fix to get by. And the most important thing was, not having a mechanical background, I still knew enough that I think this is what it's going to be. And I was lucky that that's what it was.
Right.
And I had the right spares for it.
Right.
After that, in Pakistan, I was actually heading out towards the Afghan border, and the whole bike just died. Like all electrics, everything just failed.
Just shut down.
It just shut down. It was done. So I just pulled over to the side, and I had a feeling I knew what it was. My particular model of bike is known for issues with the charging system, the rectifier, and a little bit lesser so the stator.
Right.
So I managed to flag down some soldiers. They put it into a truck. We got it back to the main city, Islamabad,
Right.
and we started pulling it apart. Unfortunately, my multimeter, the little testing tool,
Right.
that was broken as well. I pulled it out of my bag and the wires were snapped off. So I
Alright.
couldn't test it 100%.
Yeah.
I pulled off the stator. It looked a little bit black.
Right.
And luckily, I had a spare stator. However, it was a Chinese one. Because
Okay.
just before leaving Australia, I'm like, I should probably carry a spare of these. But I could just get my hands on a Chinese one. I packed it and off I went. So we changed that. Still wasn't charging.
Okay.
So that same day, we went to another workshop. This guy just happened to have, like, in his little spare parts drawer, he had a
Out of the blue.
CBR600
Oh, wow.
rectifier. We put that on, got it all working, and I was good to go. So within a day,
Super.
I
Good
had
you
it
have
all
been
sorted.
lucky, man.
That was super lucky. That was
Yeah.
super lucky.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that luck ran out right here. So when I got to
Yeah.
Pune, the same charging system started failing again because I've got a little indicator light.
Yeah.
It shows me what voltage the bike is running at or the battery is running
Yeah.
at, and it was showing a bit of a warning.
Yeah.
So all the way down from Mumbai to here, that warning was flashing, and I was just praying and hoping that let me at least get to where
Yeah.
I need to be.
Yeah.
Better than breaking down in the middle of the road.
Right.
So unfortunately, we tried to fix here. So the stator was rewound. A Duke 390 rectifier was put on. That fix cost me a fair bit, but it lasted all of about 5 kilometers.
Yeah. Oh.
So that failed again. At the moment, I've got parts from America on order.
Okay.
It's now just a matter of a waiting game and seeing if those parts will fix the problem and if that problem will be fixed in time before the bike needs to go home.
Right. When you talk about spares of the GSX-R600, what were you carrying on the motorcycle?
So
And just to add to that,
yeah.
if you can just tell us about the kind of luggage that you were carrying. You were also carrying a spare. I think you were also carrying a chain cleaning liquid, and you're also carrying all of that. So just give an insight.
Okay, so I'll talk about luggage first. So
Yeah.
again, being a sport bike, they don't have racks. They don't make racks for them.
You
and
built one.
Weight is the problem
Right.
because everything you're adding to the back, it's putting more stress on the frame issue that we talked about
Right.
before. So on the back, I've got 2 soft bags.
Yeah.
They're Krieger. I
Yeah.
think you guys have them here as well.
Yes.
So I've got 2 Kriegers on the back. They're just held on with straps. So when you take them off, it just goes back to being a regular seat.
Oh wow.
On the side of the bag, just strapped on with a bit of rope, I've got 2 bags of fuel. So they're again soft bags, but they hold about 5 liters of fuel each.
Yeah.
I only keep about 3 liters in them because of expansion within the
Yeah,
bag of
yeah,
heat
yeah.
and everything. So
Yeah.
I've got 3 liters each side. And on those support rods on the side, I've added 2 little bottle holders. One has a 1 liter fuel bottle, which also doubles as my fuel bottle for my stove for cooking. And the other bottle is my chain cleaning thing. So that's essentially in terms of luggage. So on the back, I've got camping,
That's
cooking.
pretty tiny for like a 20 to 1,000
Look, it
kilometer
really
long
is.
trip.
And again, it comes with experience. It comes with time. My packing is like super, super light.
Right.
When you have a big bike with panniers, you can just throw stuff in.
Yep.
Like if I need it, I need it. I have to really think hard about what I really need. So like I said, 1 Krieger, it's got my camping, cooking, spares, tools, and products. So products is like, WD-40, gasket welding tool, gasket maker, all sorts of products I've got. My second bag is all my electronics, my clothes, and toiletries.
Okay.
So when we talk about clothes, I've got like 2 T-shirts all up. That's all I had. So you have to
Wow.
you have to think really hard. But the one luxury item I have is a chair. So I've got a folding chair in one of the bags as well.
Yeah.
And besides all that stuff on the back, I've got a tank bag on the front, which is just like water, snacks, and a couple of small bits and pieces.
Right.
So luggage was fairly light. It worked. I mean, it's not perfect. Like sometimes the bags would sort of move around a little bit. I've got to cinch them back down, use some extra rope,
Right.
extra straps, but you make do.
Yeah. And what about space?
So spares, again, you can't carry everything. And being a sport bike and being injected, that has its own complications with it. If you're using something that's carbureted, it can be fixed a little bit easier. With injection, if you lose your CDI unit, that burns out or something, you're finished. Being a newer sport bike, you lose your ECU, you're finished. So, and those things are quite expensive to carry as spares as well. So what I had was I had spare clutch and throttle cables.
Right.
What I actually did with those is I actually wired them up through the bike. I ran them, and I've just zip tied them to the existing cables.
Okay.
So if a throttle cable, for example, was to snap, I've got it ready at both ends. I've just got to unplug the old and clip in the new.
Oh, okay.
I had a spare clip-on, so in case, like, even if it was billet,
Yeah.
even if I did drop it and damage, I have a spare of that. Spare spark plugs, spare coil pack.
Okay.
Um,
Did you have a spare sprocket kit as well?
no, I didn't. And I've actually had issues with my chain as well, so I actually forgot to mention that. So currently I'm on my third chain. And I think what that has to do with is maybe I've not been the best at doing my chain maintenance, but more so the amount of off-road I've done, I probably should have been cleaning it a lot more frequently
yes,
than
yes,
what I was.
absolutely.
So I'd be doing it every maybe 300 kilometers or so.
Right.
Whereas, I could have done just a 50-kilometer day through all sorts of sand and mud, and then I've got to clean it. So part of that might be on me, but I don't know how it was installed to begin with. But whatever it is, I managed to find at least a chain. So in Russia, when I had to change it the first time, there was no sprockets available, but at least I could get a new chain on it.
Right. Yeah.
So, but you've got to think about sort of the best value proposition as well. You can carry a spare chain and sprocket, but it's so heavy. And do you want to lug that around with you everywhere? Or do you want to just hope that a chain is something you can find, whereas a fuel pump is not something I can
that
find?
you'll find easily. Yeah.
So you do the best you can, not having mechanical knowledge. You make these judgments. I had the spare stator. It was a Chinese one. It did the job to get me to here, but it might have burnt out and killed the rectifier I had on there. Who knows?
Yeah. But, after all of this, I mean, you're on that ride. You're going through, a bad patch of road. What's going through your mind, man?
Man, there's a couple of things that go through your mind, and they're very opposing thoughts. One of it is, wow, I can't believe I'm finally here. I'm doing it, There would be times at work I was sitting and reading someone else's report, imagining what it's going to be like for me, and suddenly here I am. Like, I'm surrounded by nothing. It's just me. And the flip side of it is thinking, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Like, it's miserable. It's hot. Yeah. Like, it's just tough. I could be at home not spending money on this. I could be at home just comfortable.
Yeah.
Like one meme or something I read a long time ago is, motorcycle travel is spending money to live like a homeless person. And it's just...
That's so true. Yeah.
It's tough. But it's tough when you're doing it. Yeah. After you've done it, after you've completed it, when you look back, like even sitting outside just scrolling some photos, you're like, I did this. It was good.
Yeah, and we just heard that you got married like a month before you left for the trip.
Yeah.
So how was that like?
I actually got married in March and I left in June. So, but again, like this is something...
Yeah.
I left, So, I was getting abused for... No, I wasn't. Yeah. My wife was quite supportive of it. She knew that I wanted to do this for a long time.
Yep.
And, I did it. So she's actually come and met me here in India.
Right.
So even though my bike trip is finished here in India, we're actually going to travel together through the Americas for another 8 to 9 months.
On a motorcycle?
Not on a motorcycle.
Hopefully not on a GSX-R600.
No, definitely not on the GSX-R. We thought about a motorcycle, but most likely we're going to buy a van and drive from the south to the north.
Yeah. Also, talk about mobile phone connectivity. How is it like across the globe? I mean, sure it's different to different parts, right?
It's cheap. So definitely cheaper in Australia. So everywhere I was going, I was buying a SIM card. So Russia was great.
And how easy is it to get a SIM card?
Much easier than India.
Really?
So India's the toughest. So in Russia it was super easy, super cheap. And look, it's helpful. Like, it's nice to think that you want to be off the grid or something, but it's just nice to have it in your hand. Like, even if you've got no connectivity, you can just know that if you get connectivity, you can just look up, all right, this guest house I want to stay at, what's the rating? Like, you can just do a bit of a check before you walk in.
Right.
Like, before I had phones or whatever, if I'd been in a remote area, I'd walk into each place and check it out individually. It's just an extra tool.
Right.
But all that being said, in Tajikistan, following this pattern, I went and bought a SIM card. Only then I realized that pretty much 90% of the country has no coverage whatsoever.
Oh.
So I had a card, but it was useless.
Yeah, and these are expensive, cheap?
Fairly cheap.
All right. And your mobile phone also doubled up as your navigation device?
It did. So I actually started the trip with 2 phones, and I had a grand plan that one is going to be mounted on the bike for GPS and music. One is in my pocket for photos and stuff.
Right.
That first phone, within 2 weeks, it fell off the bike and I lost it.
And you didn't know about it?
I found that about 20 kilometers down the road.
Oh.
I rode back 20 kilometers in first gear, just looking left and right. But, once the phone falls off, it could have bounced anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was down to one phone, and that was everything for me. It was my photos, my videos, my GPS, because I had offline maps as well. So not Google. I used an app called Maps.me,
Okay.
where I downloaded countries and regions as I needed them.
Yeah, that's a good move. Yeah.
So I wasn't reliant on having mobile. So if I had mobile, like I said, it's a nice thing to have, but I could work without it.
Yeah. Because Maps.me, if I'm not wrong, can be, can work offline as well.
Yes, 100%. If you've downloaded the country's maps,
Yep.
you've got everything. You've got places to stay, you've got places to eat. The only thing is, it's not smart enough to know if a road is closed or if a road has
Okay.
traffic on it.
Yeah.
So in Mongolia, once I was going up this really high mountain pass, I got to the top and the pass was closed. They're like, as of last night, we're closing it for a year to do construction. So Maps.me is not going to tell me that.
Oh.
I didn't have enough fuel to go back. So I was like, I stood there for like 2 hours begging and pleading with them, like, look, I've got to go, got to go. So Maps.me can have its downsides, but
Yeah.
at
But what
least it's
happened?
something.
Did he let you go?
I got past, yeah. So there were some other locals who were also saying, like, look, you've got to let us go. And they finally wore him down. And once they did that, they just said to me, just get on your bike and just go, like, right now before he changes his mind.
Okay.
So,
Superb, man.
yeah.
Very, very interesting. Any scary situations? Anything that
I wouldn't say scary.
off?
I mean, you can't let fear take over you, but there are some times where you're like really, really remote locations, and if something happens, you're screwed. Like plenty of people break their legs or whatever from just a small fall. I'd like to think I had some luck on my side. A couple of times my front slid out in sand, but maybe the tire saved me, maybe luck. But riding wise, no scary situations. Coming into Pakistan, I was a little bit worried. Like, you hear so much stuff on the news about India, Pakistan, and especially at this sort of time, I think there was quite a bit of tension there as well.
Yep.
But that was all good. The people were super friendly. In Pakistan, for actually about half the time, I had no mobile.
Network.
No network.
Yeah.
So I was staying wherever I could see on the road. And one town I stayed at, I found out after the fact, it was one of the last towns that the Taliban were driven out of, and the people that lived there sort of still live by very conservative ideologies.
Right.
And at the time, I had no idea, but now it makes sense because when I was going towards there, the police actually stopped me. They asked me, why are you going there? I'm like, I just need a place to sleep.
Right.
I asked them, like, if I can sleep here, I'll sleep here. Will you let me sleep here? Like, all right, just go there, but check back with us in the morning.
Oh.
So, yeah, after the fact, it seemed a bit
Yeah.
worrying. And, that town of all places, like, when I get into a place, I never turn on TV.
Yeah.
I turned on the TV and, like, the news was, like, super, like, nationalist on the Pakistan side, saying, like, India's done this, India's done that. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stay in the room today.
Yeah.
I'll just, eat what food I have. But look, all said and done, no problems.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to get scared of things like this, but if you let fear take over, you wouldn't go anywhere.
Okay, tell me about your best and your worst memory of this trip.
I think they may even be the same memory. So between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, there's a mountain pass called Kizalat Pass. It's the second highest border crossing in the world. The first highest is actually China-Pakistan, which I did as well, but
Right.
that's like a paved road. This one is just pure off-road.
Off-road,
There's
yeah.
about 30 kilometers between the two countries where the pass is located. No one looks after it. It's no man's land. And the actual climb and descent to the pass is this red dust.
Okay.
But even if there's a little bit of moisture, it just turns into the worst mud you've ever seen.
Okay.
Like there's apps, there's one app called iOverlander where people that travel overland, they put little notes on, okay, this is good, this is bad. Every review of that pass is like, just don't go anywhere near here if there's even a chance of rain.
Okay.
It's really beautiful when it's covered in snow, but snow also means that moisture is
Moisture.
leaking into the
Yep.
ground.
Yep.
So it's probably my best memory because it was so beautiful to look at. It's like this red earth just covered in snow. It's my worst because leading up to that morning, I was just completely scared that I'm going to fall. I'm like, I've done so much of the trip. I haven't fallen. I'm going to get stuck in this mud. I'm going to lose the bike into the mud. I'm just going to die. So I left super early that morning
Right.
because the logic was if you leave really early, the sun hasn't hit the snow and ice yet. The
Yeah,
ground is
because
still
it's
frozen.
moisture, yeah.
But then the challenge is you're riding on ice. So the river crossings, you're riding on ice, not flowing water.
Wow.
So yeah, I got through that, like my whole body was just tensed up. Like
Yeah.
you try to relax and be smooth, but I was scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got through it. I somehow crawled through all that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't mud. Like
Yeah.
you could see on the edges, it was starting to turn into mud.
Yeah.
By the time I got there, water had started trickling from like the snow melts.
Oh wow.
But
And beautiful and scary at the same time.
it's beautiful. Like that general region
Yeah.
of Tajikistan, the Wakhan corridor along Afghanistan, it's really beautiful.
Right.
It's tough, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But this particular pass was especially tough.
Yeah. A couple of things before we conclude this podcast. One, what was the kind of gear that you had on you in terms of the attire?
Sure. So I, starting from the top, I had a modular helmet. So like the flip front one.
Right.
It was good because what that means is if I stop somewhere, it's easy to interact with people.
Right.
Like, I do this because I want to meet people, I want to talk
Right.
to people. When your helmet is on, you're just another guy on a bike. When they see like a human face,
Yeah.
they can talk to you in a bit
Yep.
more of a personal manner.
Yep.
The only downside to that was I had a GoPro, which I haven't done much with, but it was on the side. So
Right.
all my recording is from one side only.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Right.
I was wearing a climb jacket.
Yeah. The latitude?
I have no idea, man. I
Alright.
literally just went to the shop. I thought, yeah, I'll get one of these.
Yeah.
Like all my trips before this, I used to wear leather, like my normal track leathers.
But this must have been like an all-weather jacket.
It was, yeah. That being said, I could have probably gotten away with a simpler jacket. I'd never had an off-road touring jacket before. I went
Yeah.
and bought this. It was okay.
But I think also the thing with an all-weather jacket is you have a lot of pockets to store your
Yeah,
smaller things in.
yeah,
So I
that's
think
true.
that helps.
That's true.
Yeah.
And look, it reduced the need to have like a rain jacket over the top. So that was good. For pants, I initially bought a set of climb pants, but I just thought it looked a bit too goofy. Like on the sport bike again, I don't want to look like this big like touring GS dude.
Right.
So I actually wore the first set of jeans that I ever bought on a bike. So they're actually motorcycling jeans.
Okay.
They have Kevlar on the knees
yep.
and on the backside.
Yep.
Those were about 12, 13 years old. They like
Right.
got rips in them and everything.
Right.
No armor. So they had the Kevlar protection, but no armor. That was a
Right.
trade-off that I was well aware going into it. But the fact that I'm traveling, not just riding, I'm getting off the bike, I'm doing sightseeing, I'm walking around. It has to be somewhat comfortable.
Right.
And that was the thing for boots as well. So I bought a pair of former adventure boots,
Nice.
which was super nice. Like my
Yeah.
nicest
I think they're
purchase by
comfortable to stay in
They are
them
so
for
like
the entire day.
You can get short ones or tall ones.
Yeah.
I bought the tall ones because I found it a bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
If I had the short ones, I'd be wearing them like a regular shoe. Like
Yeah.
they were super good.
But I think also the problem with short ones is the water can seep in quite easily.
That's right. Yeah.
from
So
the-
for water
from the
crossings,
top,
you know
right.
what I do? I tuck my jeans into my boots, so
Yeah.
then my
Yep.
water level will be
Yeah.
up against
Right.
sort of my knee.
Right.
But yeah, that was the gear. It was fairly simple.
Right.
And for gloves, I had like a dual chamber glove.
Right.
So one chamber was waterproof, one chamber was like a vented one.
Yeah.
That turned out to be complete nonsense. Like
Yeah.
the waterproof one had water all through it.
Yeah.
So I actually struggled with my hands a lot. There were some really cold days where I couldn't feel my fingers at all. Like it went.
Yeah, I was coming to that. What was the coldest and the warmest day?
So the warmest wasn't too bad. It'd be about maybe 35, 37, like that. Coldest was definitely, there was a few days below zero.
Right.
And it was tough, really tough, because it's not just the cold, it's the wind chill when you're
Yep.
moving.
Yep.
So I'd be stopping every 10 minutes, touching my engine just to get some blood back into my
Yeah,
fingers. I tried buying like dishwashing gloves to add an extra layer underneath. That didn't work. And not knowing so much about touring, what I didn't know that people have is hand warmers,
Yep.
heated grips.
Yeah.
So in Kazakhstan, I managed to find a set in some shop.
Oh,
I
wow.
installed them myself in the car park, and
Oh,
those were by
super.
far the best accessory.
That's awesome.
So it wasn't a modification I did before the trip,
Yeah.
but
Something
halfway
on
through
the
the
move.
trip, I did it, and it was so good.
Yeah. And I think the one last thing that I want to ask you is, what do you take from all of this? I mean, it's over, right? It's almost over. If I
Yeah,
can
it's
call
over.
It that.
Look, one is a sense of personal satisfaction that, you know, for so long I'd been wanting to do something. There were hurdles along the way, whether they be personal or even with the bike. But in the end, things work out as long as you sort of keep that vision in mind. And on the trip itself, look, the one thing I really enjoyed is seeing people. When you're moving overland slowly, you see the world change slowly in front of you. So I could see like the Russians slowly change into Central Asian, slowly be influenced by sort of the Iran, Afghan side. Then you've got Pakistan, where it slowly started to become like India. You see that history moving before you. You see those cultures and faces changing before you. And end of the day, you know, people are good. Like people try to help you where they can, especially when they see you on a motorbike. They see that you're vulnerable. They see that all those bags you have with you, that's all all you have. Like they'll offer you food, water. And it's nice to experience that that hospitality of people around the world, you know, no matter where they're from. So that was, I think, the thing I enjoyed the most, that I took away, that, it's nice to experience that person-to-person feeling.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fans or followers of PowerDrift are probably watching this right now. Do you have any final message to these guys?
Look, I've got to say, when I came to India, I was really surprised by how much motorcycling's taken off. So not just motorcycling, like being into bikes, but actually getting on them and traveling.
Yep.
And every now and then, someone come and say something like, "Oh, how do you do this? I wish I could do that." And I think it's totally possible, because this country, it has so many places to go. Like forget traveling through different countries. Like
Right.
if
India
that's your
itself,
dream,
yeah.
India itself. Like sure, if you want to go overseas, you can do it. But India itself, I feel like this month that the bike has not been running, I could have done so much more. And I've barely
Sure,
scratched the
yeah.
surface. Like I think I've ridden here for about 6 weeks since I entered from Pakistan,
Right.
and I've barely scratched the surface on what there is to see in India. So, you don't need to have like a big adventure bike. Like yes, my bike is big, but it's not at all made for long distance.
Right.
Just jump on what you have and just ride and enjoy. Just strap a backpack to the back and enjoy it.
Superman, it was so great talking to you. I'm glad I had the chance to meet you and have this
Likewise.
conversation, and I'm sure you guys have enjoyed this as well. Thank you for being on the PowerDrift podcast, Ashim. Wish you all the best for your future rides, for your future drives, and we hope to see you on a motorcycle or in a car somewhere down the line. I'm sure you've put out a lot of pictures and some videos or clips of the places that
So
you've traveled. And people
when I
wanna
get
follow you.
when I get the chance, I'm trying to post on my Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Yeah.
And my name for all of that is 7 days, 1 shower. So the number 7 days, number 1 shower.
We'll post that in the description or the comment section, so you can check out Ashim. 7 days, 1 shower. Really nice talking to you. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. We will be back with a lot more episodes on the PowerDrift podcast. If you want to listen to someone or if you want to see someone on this particular podcast, then let us know in the comment section below. You can also listen to us on other audio mediums. Those links will be in the description below. And until the next one, I have this line where I end it by saying, I'm Varun Painter, and I will see you later.
Thanks.